Greetings, greetings, greetings. You are now tuned into the Vault. Trust Christian, know nothing, control everything. Just want to thank you for tuning in live, listening to replay. Always appreciate everybody that tunes in live, listens in a replay. This is Trust Christian, know nothing, control everything. And today we have a special guest with us, Pat Soldano, and definitely appreciate her for coming to share with you all some very important key points that we've seen her highlight, and that is the importance of connecting with her today. Really going over some family estate stuff, some, advocacy, and just more of alignment where, there's this buzzword thrown around generational wealth. And we definitely are here to clear it up. So we definitely are honored and privileged to have someone of Pat's caliber, knowing that she does work with very, very powerful and important people, has seen the gambit of what money looks like that stays in the family. And she also can share with you, I'm sure, some dismal stories of how families didn't just have things set up properly or didn't have the proper relationship. So definitely appreciate Pat Soldano for bringing your background to the table. And how you doing today, Pat?
Good. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Definitely appreciate you. I want you to actually start out. What is your background and what led you to doing what you're doing right now?
Happy to share. So I started in the family office industry in a single family office. I worked for the Field family, Marshall Field family of Chicago. I worked for Ted Field, his brother, here in California. Helped him build out that single family office and then wanted to move on and work with more than one family. So I developed what's now called a multifamily office that was called Simrick Family Office Services. And in the early years of that industry, grew that business over the course of 20 plus years and ultimately sold in '09 to GenSpring, who at the time was the largest multifamily office in the nation. They are owned by Truist now. They were owned SunTrust, which merged with another bank, and they're Truist today. I developed the Western region for them as Western region head, so I managed everything west of the Mississippi and continued in that role for 5 years. Ultimately, I decided I was ready to retire from that role. I retired. They asked me to stay on as a consultant for 3 more years, which I did. At the same time, I was working in Washington, D.C., advocating for successful individuals and single family offices and family businesses. I founded one of the organizations that's on the screen today, Policy and Taxation Group. It is a 501(c)(4), actually in 1995. It advocates for single family offices and successful families in America at the same time that I was running my multifamily office business. So at the end of 2017, I decided I really wanted to focus all my energies on advocacy for families in this country because I felt they really didn't have the voice that they needed to have. And so it's a full-time effort now. I've had help throughout the years, but now this is what I'm doing, running not only Policy and Taxation Group, but also Family Enterprise USA. And I'm happy to go in and explain both of those two organizations and how they work together, if you think that would be of interest.
Oh yeah, definitely. How does that work today? And what does the political landscape look like with you actually working with them?
Sure. So Policy and Taxation Group is a 501(c)(4). So it's an educational organization, not for profit, and works directly with members of Congress. We have two law firms in DC, Squire Patton Boggs and the Brownstein Law Firm. Democrats, Republican, both organizations are bipartisan as we are. We have the House covered, we have the Senate covered, and the administration covered. So we have a team of about 10 lawyers in DC that work collectively 24/7 with us on the ground. And of course, this is a very, very critical year. Policy and Taxation Group is supported by single family offices and successful individuals. And that's how it's a little different from Family Enterprise USA. So Family Enterprise USA is a 501(c)(3). So it's a not-for-profit charitable organization, and so it can accept contributions from donor advised funds and private foundations. It was formed actually by the Roundhurst family in Minneapolis in 2007. And its mission is to advocate for family businesses, family-owned businesses around the country, all sizes, small, medium, and large, and all industries. So we work with 20 different trade associations now. So we have over 1 million members. And these trade associations work with us because they work on the business side of tax and economic policy. We work on the family side. So we work on tax and economic policy that affect the families of family businesses. And as we've learned, 80% of them are pass-through entities. So they're paying ordinary income tax. So you can see how the two organizations are very synergistic. They're both working on tax and economic policy, one for family businesses and one for successful individuals and single family offices. So there's a lot of overlap between the two organizations.
Okay, well, this is actually one of the tip-offs here. Definitely want to hop straight into this question, just because you say that this is a critical year in 2025 with the political climate and whatnot. Could you talk about the one of the biggest thing, which is the estate tax? You like you say there possibly could be a repeal of the law or a change in the law. Could you talk about that?
Sure. As it relates to the estate tax, everybody is focused on the one big beautiful bill, right? That passed the House. We all know it's in the Senate. They're working on their bill or their version of the House bill in the Senate, and we can go into where the status of that all is. But the estate tax exemption currently is $14 million per person, double per couple. That in the big bill, in the one big beautiful bill, actually goes up to $15 million and it's made permanent. Now, I caution everyone that this one big beautiful bill provisions, as Congress tells us, is being made permanent. But I don't really believe there's ever, unfortunately, any permanency to any of our tax law. It's permanent until the next Congress decides to change it. So that's why it's really important that people continue to advocate and continue to raise their issues every single year. So the estate tax exemption will go up to 15, which is good news. It'll help a lot of families plan. Unfortunately, the rate's still going to stay at 40%, which is discouraging. We, through Policy and Taxation Group, actually have a bill in the House, a bipartisan bill, that would reduce that rate from 40% to 20%. And the logic is, well, why should you pay a greater rate of tax because you die than you pay when you sell your business? Unfortunately, it doesn't have legs right now. We've struggled in these last few sessions of Congress to get that bill to move through the House, but it's out there. It's a marker when they start to negotiate the rate.
Okay. We're gonna go into some of the questions, more of the questions that we have for you. One of them be, what do you believe is the single biggest mistake families make when heading into wealth transitions, and how can they be avoided?
The biggest mistake I see them making is they don't plan. They put off planning. Most first generation wealth owners, whether it's a business or some other form of wealth, they all think they're never going to die. So they think, well, I don't need to do it yet. So planning is so very important, and planning early is the most important thing. Gifting early is the best way of minimizing your estate tax. And there is a gift tax, but as I mentioned, this exemption of $14 million moving to 15 is not only for estate tax, it's for gift and generation skipping tax as well. All three taxes are unified. So you really, if you have not taken advantage of your gift exemption and passed your business on or a portion of your business on to the next generation, you need to do that. And you can plan, you can pass on your assets, whether it's a business or something else. And that doesn't mean you have to pass on control. There's lots of techniques you can use. Not that I'm a state attorney, and I tell people to contact their state attorney, but you can give away non-voting stock and keep the voting stock or voting control. There's lots of ways that you can keep the business or keep the assets control, but give away the assets, which I think is critically important for next generation to actually have that ownership and that responsibility if you really want them to operate the business and work in the business and have that kind of authority that's so important.
I got a big question for you, and I'm diving straight into something that I know you've heard in our environments come up big time. And I think me and you, I look forward to actually interviewing you one day on stage about this more and more because it's a big deal, which is governance. Could you talk about how that is an issue for families, multi-generational, because they say that there's a 70% plus fall off after second and third gen. What would your thoughts be on governance from the successful families to the unsuccessful families that are able to do that?
Well, governance is critically important for lots of reasons, and I do think that the shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves theory has now been somewhat disproven. So it's not the case anymore that family businesses can't survive to the third generation. More and more are surviving, and they're doing it because of planning and because of governance. It's very, very important. Governance is really the tools that you use to manage the business under the guidelines of the family's values and principles. And it doesn't have to be a complicated structure. It probably could use some outside help as a family member to decide what their governance policies are going to be. But to have that structure and to do that planning is really critical. And there's lots of different ways that people can do governance, and there's corporate governance and there's family governance, and they're different, but they need to work together. But the most important thing is that the family have some rules, some guidelines, some operating uh, rules as well as to how they're going to operate as a business and how they're going to operate as a family.
Thank you. So, how do longstanding fights in DC inform the conversation for legacy when it comes to using trust or wills and preservation for the political climate? What are their thoughts on these type of tools in DC?
Well, DC doesn't think about it in that context. They don't concern themselves with wills and trusts. People concern themselves with wills and trusts, but they concern themselves with the laws that rule what trusts are going to be, what's going to be included in trusts. And that's all the estate tax laws, which again, it's gift estate and generation skipping tax. People should not forget that. There is a generation skipping tax that I think many people are unaware of. And it was instituted because families were skipping generations. Families were passing assets on to a generation past the second generation or the third generation. And the government decided they were going to apply a tax to that to prevent that. And that tax can actually be as much as 70% plus. So people need to worry about estate and gift and also generation skipping tax. But the tax laws in this country, last session of Congress, there were some movements to change some of the grantor trusts, which would make it much more difficult for family businesses to use trust to pass their tools on, to pass their businesses on to the next generation. And I will say, while trusts are important for tax purposes, they're also just as important for the family to explain in a legal document how do they want their business or their assets to be managed? How do they want the family to operate together? Who are the trustees? Who are the beneficiaries? Is there a corporate trustee? How are they going to work together, whether it's a business or it's just liquid assets? It doesn't matter. That's what a trust really should do. It helps people to minimize estate tax, but that's not the primary rule for a will or a trust. And everyone should have a will and trust in this country. And in many states, as you well know, especially here in California, there's something called probate. And probate is something you never, ever want to go through. And if you don't hold your assets in a trust, you could be subject to probate. And that means your assets have to go through a very long and costly legal process in which a judge can actually determine where your assets ultimately go or how they're managed. So you want to avoid that. So you want to make sure that you have a trust. And most importantly, you can't just have the trust. You actually have to have the legal name of whether it's your real estate or your whatever assets you're holding in the name of that trust. If you forget that step, then you eliminate the whole value of having that trust.
So, what advice do you give entrepreneurial families who want to preserve their wealth and their values of capitalism for future generations then?
Well, I give them the advice I just gave, which is make sure you have a will and a trust
Yeah.
and make sure you have a good plan. Make sure you communicate that plan to the family. Some people develop these things with their estate attorney or their accountants or their advisors, and then they forget to tell the family all about it. They forget to say, oh, by the way, I made you a co-trustee with the bank. That's not the way to do it. So make sure you plan, make sure that you communicate the plan and do that on a regular basis. Don't just do it once and think that you're good to go. I mean, this law we're going to have new tax policy. Everybody should be relooking at their estate plan and saying, does this follow the current tax policy that's in place?
Okay. And what motivates you to keep fighting for these causes after more than 2 decades?
What motivates me is I really believe that we should live life with purpose and passion and make a difference.
Okay.
And I really believe I've made a difference. Sometimes it seems like it's not a huge difference, but when I started working on the estate tax, as example, which is one of the taxes that we work on, the policy was a 55% rate and the lifetime exemption was $650,000. Now here we are decades later, the tax rate's gone down to 40% from 55 and the exemption's gone up to $15 million. So you can make a difference. I have seen the harm that the estate tax has done to families, not the people that can afford it. This is what the media has lost sight of. The people that pay this tax are usually the ones that get caught. They are usually the ones that, I'll give you an example. I have a good friend who manufactures airplane parts. She has 300 plus employees. Her brother and her ran the business together at 65 years old. He died from a massive heart attack. He had not done his planning. She owed $60 million in estate tax. She didn't want to lay people off. She didn't want to close the business. She wanted to maintain all of her employees, so she sold stock, she borrowed, she negotiated with the IRS. She was able to do that. That is what's wrong with this tax. It's not getting the people who our legislators want to try and get, the very, very wealthy people. You can't always avoid all of the tax, but you can do a certain amount of planning. So the reason that I continue to work on this is I've seen these kind of stories that I just shared with you over and over again. It's just a wrong tax, just like so many of the other things in this country. Income tax, why is it that 80% of family businesses operate as a pass-through entity? So 80% of them are paying ordinary income tax, right? They're paying 37% unless they can take advantage of 199A, which is hopefully going to be maintained in this legislation. So maybe they're down to 31%, maybe 28, but corporate America gets to pay 21%. Why is that fair? So those are the issues that motivate me every day. I think it's really important that family businesses and entrepreneurs, successful individuals in this country have a voice when it comes to tax and economic policy.
Thank you for making that so clear. So, what would you like your legacy? What legacy do you hope to leave in your efforts behind?
Well, I don't think a lot about the legacy, but I guess if I had to, I would say that it would be just that. It would be that the policies that we help Congress to implement are policies that are not only good for family businesses, successful individuals, and entrepreneurs, but they're good for the country and they're good for economy. And we've seen that happen over and over. And job creation. 60% of the jobs in this country are created by family businesses and 54% of the GDP. So it's really, really important that we protect them and we promote them. And that's why I think you're aware of, we got Congress to form, because it's theirs, a Congressional Family Business Caucus. It's a bipartisan caucus, has 50 members in the last session of Congress. We're getting it reinstituted in this session. And we're really proud of the fact that 40% are Democrats, because we need both parties in this country. And so we're proud of the message that we deliver to members of Congress from not only family businesses, but voters, because voters are the ones that get to members of Congress. And I can't emphasize enough on this call that people, if you're a member of Congress, if you do not know them, if you have not met with them or called them or emailed them, you really need to do that, because they listen to people like us, but they listen more to constituents. And your voice should be heard. And a change happens when your voice is heard. So make sure you're telling them your concerns and your challenges.
Big time. I appreciate you letting people know to bridge that gap between politics and business, as I've heard throughout my life that they're going to mix eventually at one point the more you grow. But I definitely want to leave this to you now as a word of wisdom that maybe you've heard in your life or something you would like to share with more so even a younger audience, because the mind should stay young anyways and learning. So what would you say to a younger person right now in the country, to hey, this is maybe the path to go if you're looking to build generational wealth, or just any words of wisdom that you would want to give some young people, as far as that goes.
Well, I would say one of the things that I've always inspired me is a saying that Peter Drucker, so Peter Drucker, the father of management, I mean, I was fortunate enough to actually go to Claremont and have him as an instructor. And Peter Drucker has a saying where he says, bright people have bright ideas, but people with tenacity get the job done. And I believe that. I think I'm a smart person. I don't think I'm an exceptionally bright person, but I have tenacity.
There
And I
you
think people just need to get the job done. And so I think that's really important. And I think that letting your voice be heard in a educated, logical manner is really, really important. And because I say that because I think just screaming about something is not the answer. Just protesting to protest is not the answer. But having a clear message and delivering that message to members of Congress who run our country is really critical. And don't think you can't make a difference because you can. And as I already said, your voice should be heard. They want to hear from you. And it's important that you exercise that, the free will that we have in this country.
Thank you, Pat. That really made me wonder how many people have underestimated you in life because of your tenacity now. It's just like she's actually probably a very tenacious person saying that as a trait of her character. It's like, yeah, she's probably more bulldog than she is, puppy, So it's good to know that. I'm really happy to hear that. Happy to know that we all come from different shapes and sizes and colors, and to know that is a running theme of success, and appreciate you big time for sharing that heart, that it does take heart, not just always the head to actually build something. Being persistent is a big valuable trait that people underestimate nowadays, but I appreciate you big time. Appreciate the parting message there. It really is definitely inspiring. Look forward to meeting Peter Drucker as well. So thank you so much, Pat. Definitely appreciate you big time, and looking forward to having you back. And please, everyone, check out her pages, PATG at .us, and then FEUSA.us. I definitely want you all to check out the resources from her page. Is there anything in specific you want newcomers to check out first on your website?
Yeah, I think that if you look at our website, you will see our about us and you can learn who we are, but you'll also look at accomplishments and you'll see what our priorities are. All of those policies that are in existence today in the TCJA tax bill, we want those to be made permanent as they can be made, and extended, of course. So it's really, really important that people go to the website and read those and then reach out to their members of Congress.
Thank you, Pat. Appreciate you big time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kristen. Have a good day.
You
Take
too.
care.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.